know what time it is out there. It is time for another episode of the Make Money and Have Fun show. And we are rounding out Author Month. This is the last day of the month today. So I'm super excited. I had such a busy month. I was literally just talking to my guest backstage, talking about how busy I have been. It is such a difference going from doing shows once a week to once a day. Huge, huge difference. I learned so much. I've been so happy. This has been so much fun. And I hope that you are still hanging out with us. Let's remind you where we all are today.
My motto in life is make money and have fun. I'm on a mission to show everyone how to make money, yeah, and have fun. I'm all about making money and having fun.
All right, let's jump into this thing. So this is super cool. I actually did, I don't know if you remember, but right before this month started, for anybody who's been following along with us, tracking our progress and our growth as we've been going along here, right before this month started, about a week before, I actually did a little intro, little trailer kind of each of the speakers, of each of the authors that I'm bringing on here. And I brought on this guy, Rick Chromey, and to be honest, I really didn't know him. I didn't know what he did or what he does. And as soon as he started speaking, I was like, whoa, this is going to be a fun conversation that we have today. And then we had this funny thing where we had to reschedule a couple of different times because he got busy, I got busy, he went somewhere, I went somewhere. But we are getting it in before the end of the month, so I'm super excited. Let's all put our hands together for Mr. Rick Chromey. What's up, Rick?
Wow, Fred, we meet. We finally connect.
Here we are. Look at this. I told you we were going to do it.
Yeah.
I wasn't worried. Were you worried?
No, not at all. Not at all.
All right, me neither. We're good. So you got to tell me about this room that you're in. You got like comic books hanging on the wall and like It just looks awesome. Tell us about that.
Yeah, this is my studio. You really can't see the whole thing. I suppose I could turn the camera a little bit. You can see I've got, there you go. You got a little bit of a Pac-Man thing going there. And it's when I created the studio, I wanted to reflect not just a lot of my own interests, but also the book that I've been writing on for the last, well, for me, it's pretty much been a 20-year love affair with generations and technology, and it's all come together into one big book. And yeah, this little studio is kind of where I do my work.
That's awesome. And that sounds like an even cooler book with all that different stuff thrown in there. It sounds like you got some pop culture, some video gaming, some movies, some media. Tell us about that.
Right. Well, I wrote this book, there we go, called Gen Tech. Wrote it here. In fact, it just came out in COVID year 2020, and we're trying to get a lot of notice of it. So I thank you, Fred, for taking me on today and giving me the opportunity to position this book. If you're interested at all in generations, if you're interested at all in technology, if you love history, if you love just stories about who we are and how we get to be who we are, you're going to like this book. In fact, we're getting some great reviews of it. And of course, every author wants to have that feedback from it. But essentially it came out of my own love affair with just studying generations. I was looking at, a lot of the ways that I was tagged. I was born in 1963, which made me classically defined as a baby boomer, born between 1946 and 1964. The problem is I never felt like a baby boomer. And as a result, I just started going on this lifelong search for who I was. And initially I was a baby buster. I felt more in line with the baby busters. And later, a man by the name of Douglas Copeland wrote a book in 1991 called Gen X, Tales of a Misguided Culture, something like that. It was a fiction novel. And suddenly Gen X gets slapped on me. And I go, okay, I think I can relate to that a little bit better. Definitely more than baby boomer. But in the end, it's been a lifelong search. And about 5 years ago, just like that great commercial of a long time ago where peanut butter and chocolate have this collision on the street and create the Reese's peanut butter cup, that's what I had with this idea. My generational study collided with technology as I saw it continually bubbling and emerging. And the long story short is this, and what the book is all about is redefining how we look at generations today. Not so much as boomers and Xers and millennials and Gen Y, Gen Z, all the other alphabet soup we do with generations, but rather redefining it through the technology that we come of age to. You know, I often have said for many, many years that the music you listen to between the ages of 10 and 25, that's the music that defines your life. And in many ways, technology does the same thing. We all come of age to certain types of technology. Some come of age or came of age to radio. You know, the older generations came of age to radio. Boomers came of age to television as a technology. I came of age to, and in my book, I actually have these generations blending across each other. So they're not stacked up. They blend very well. So you're part of two technological generations. I'm part of the space generation, born between 1950 and 1970, and the gamer generation, born between 1960 and 1980. And so for me, my technologies that really guide me, really kind of flavor my life. You know, I've always been one of these guys that, you know, and my generation's very entrepreneurial. For a reason. We think that there's second life out there on the gaming slot. You know, we think if we just play hard enough and long enough, we're going to get that second life. And so it's a fun way of looking at it. And, you know, I take it all the way up to the robotics generation, born since 2010. And if you've got your ears to the ground, your eyes open right now, robots are everywhere in our culture. And this young generation that's just emerging right now, they're entering their coming of age years. They are experiencing robots, and as well as other what I call hairy technologies of holograms, artificial intelligence, and robotics, HAIR. So it's fascinating. The book actually takes you out into the future to about the year 2055. So it goes from 1900 to 2055, and it's just a fun story of America, who we are, where our generations sit, and where we're possibly going, and it's fun. So that's it.
That's amazing. It's funny because I've had such a diverse selection of books on this show all month. I mean, I've had faith-based books, I've had children's books, I've had fiction, I've had nonfiction, I've had business, self-help, personal development. And this is the first thing that I'm seeing in this category, which really fascinates me. It's so interesting. A part of me is a bit of a history buff because my brother is a huge history buff. And so that kind of rubbed off on me a bit, but it's always fun for me to kind of look at where we are and where we're going. So where do you think we're going, Rick? Let's throw it in your court.
Well,
without giving too much away.
You know, it's always interesting. I have predicted, and I've been doing cultural exegesis, if you will, or cultural analysis for about 20 years. My doctorate was I was highly trained in the science of semiotics, which to basically make it understandable, I've been taught how to read the signs of culture and to understand how, you know, just like a weatherman can predict the future or forecast the future weather, and he doesn't always do 100%, but he's pretty accurate. What he does is he looks back at the patterns of history. He looks back at the way weather has operated in the past, and he's been trained to see those patterns, and then he can give an accurate forecast from what he sees happening right now. And essentially, that's where I'm at. I've been trained just to look at culture, to understand the history of culture, and then to look at where we're at now and forecast where we're going. For example, in my book, I talk about print technology right now is on the way out. We are becoming a digital culture. And it's interesting. I'm in a room full of books. You can't see this, but if I turn my camera around, you'd see books all around you, because I'm a book guy. I love books, but I'm also a very honest technology guy. I can tell you the book in print is going away. Probably in 20 years, less people will have books on their shelves. In fact, even the house that I'm in had a hard time selling because they have built-in bookshelves. And the previous owner told me that they had a hard time selling this house because there was this big room with built-in bookshelves. Perfect for a professor like myself, but bad for someone who wants to make it into a master bedroom, you know, or maybe an extra living space. And
Sure.
but that's, books in the printed perspective are going away, much like if you were in 1995 and we were all still very much entrenched within Kodak technology, print technology of the photograph. You might remember when we actually took our film down to a place like Walmart or Walgreens or one of those
Or
corner
CVS.
shops, and they would develop what we took, our pictures. Well, then we had the digitization of photography. Nobody does that anymore. The only time you do that is if you want a special print photograph of a particular type of thing that you've shot, and so it's unique. But we have our print technology has basically in the photograph is showing history is going away. Newspapers right now are on a very fast track to demise. We're seeing the same thing within periodicals. Even though there are more periodicals than ever before, there's been this proliferation of print magazines and such. It's almost like the last gasps of autumn when you have the bright yellows and the bright reds come out, and then it just quickly fades. And I've been predicting, I'll get back to my point here. I've been predicting for about 20 years what we just experienced in this last year. I didn't know it would be a virus that would do it, but I've been predicting what I call a blue screen moment. When your computer hits that blue screen and it comes out and basically says, you got to reboot. You've got to restart the whole system all over and just from scratch, and you lose everything that you had before. I've been predicting that type of something would happen in our culture that would literally push us into this digital world,
right,
where we were forced to actually engage it, not just play around with it, but engage it. And that's what's happened in this COVID moment right now. We are having to embrace education has had to go online, whether they liked it or not. Church has had to go online, whether it liked it or not. Those are the two great bastions of the former age of modernity. We are in a brand new world. Business was already flirting with it. So the businesses that thrived are the ones that were already there and could easily take their business and move to a fluid, fast, accessible, technological perspective. But a lot of the older institutions that simply can't do it, what are they doing? These restaurants, a lot of restaurants are closing because they built their entire business model upon come to us, sit in our space, and we'll serve you. And that model is disappearing. The home is the new restaurant. The home is the new church. The home is the new school. And the sooner we understand that. So if you ask me where we're going, what I encourage institutions to think about, especially those economic or religious or educational, is to think about the home being the new refuge as well as the new resource. That's where we're going. And the home is going to be the place. So I don't know. Open up a can of worms. What do you think, Fred? Where do you think we're going?
I love that. So I want to throw more, I guess, worms onto the floor with this one. I had a thought a couple years back. It just sprung in my head. And I started to look at people's reliance on technology. How many people, the question could be asked, are they using technology or is technology using them in a sense, right? Is it more of a crutch than it is an actual resource for them? And so I looked at it and I said, what would happen if the way that electricity was conducted today ceased to exist for some reason? And there was no longer electrical currents creating all of this.
Yeah.
What kind of world will we live in temporarily until we solve it? And the only thing that comes through my head is pandemonium. It's like, I think that
Texas about 2 weeks ago.
What's that? Yeah.
Texas.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So it's interesting that, everything to me runs in patterns, like you said. History is kind of telling us where we can go with it and what will come of it. And it was an interesting shift for me because I decided in 2020, I wanted to transition from investing to becoming a public speaker. And, a few months later, they told me I was going to have to work a little bit harder basically to do that. So yeah, I'm with you. I think that we're going to be coming back home, basically, is what it comes down to. Bringing it all
we're
in-house.
Seeing that. we're definitely seeing that in the business culture where, I've had a lot of friends as I've, even I had a grad class or two last spring online where I had some grad students that, we were exploring these issues and one guy came out and he says, listen, I'm in a job. I think it was detective work of some sort. And he was in California. And he said that, I was in detective work and I've been arguing for years. Why do I have to drive an hour and a half to get to the office to do my work when I think I can do the same work at home? But they didn't trust him to do the work at home. But because of the COVID situation, they had to let him work at home. And now he's told me there's probably no likelihood I'll ever go back to the home office. In fact, a lot of these home offices are closing up. They're finding that it's real estate that they don't need. It's overhead that they don't need. Yeah. It's shifting. It's changing our entire understanding of how we've operated. And the business culture has experienced it probably in a greater degree as far as loss. I was at a church situation yesterday talking with some church leaders, and there is a statistic floating around in the church world that as many as 1/3 of all churches that were open prior to COVID will be closed post-COVID, because there's as many as 1/3 of Christians who are talking about now, why do I need to go back to a physical building when I can sit at home and watch this online? And,
exactly.
It's shifted. And so the church world, and education, I think is the same way. As I've been doing online education as an online professor for 20 years. And a lot of my doctorate work in fact, my doctoral project is in designing an online degree. So I studied this to the nth degree. The biggest problem we have with online education in our schools and with our homes today is that we have an educator that largely has not experienced a positive online experience themselves. If they took online classes as a teacher, usually it was to get through a degree, but they're classroom people. So they naturally think that the only way we can best learn is in the classroom. That's simply not true. We learn most of the things that we learn online. We Google. I mean, the younger people are really adept at this, and older people are learning it too. But I mean, the first thing you do is you Google or you YouTube or you search engine it out. That's learning. And the best thing that we can do is teach critical thinking skills in our schooling rather than a deposit of information. It's important to know 2 + 2 = 4. I get that. But it's more important that we critically understand how we get there and how to know the right resources that affirm that truth or that idea. That makes sense?
Absolutely.
So we got to teach critical thinking in the schools.
Absolutely. It's interesting because, at first, for me at least, when COVID hit, it came as a bit of a shock to people, and even myself included. But then after a while, it's like learning how to walk again for the first time, in a sense. And even this show was born during COVID, mainly because I was bored. I'm stuck inside. I got nothing to do. Why don't I hang out with my friends? And at first, a couple things to kind of jump back to your book. Number one, I wanted to create a podcast 5-6 years ago, but it was not as easy as it is on this platform. I mean, on this platform, I just posted out, I blasted over here, blasted over there, bing, bang, boom, it's done. It's on over 15 different podcasting platforms. I remember 5-6 years ago, it was like you had to extract your RSS feed from here and embed it over there and have some tech skills. It was like an hour-long project just to upload an episode, regardless of actually recording it. And so this, the barrier to entry has gotten so much easier with technology. I was just talking Friday with my previous guest about he's looking to turn his book into a movie. And we were saying the same thing that it's not as difficult as it was years ago, right? There's the barrier to entry is becoming less and less, and technology is growing more and more, and it allows for stuff like this where, I feel like I'm sitting in your living room with you. I want to go over there and start playing Pac-Man.
Yeah. Well, and this is one of the things I talk about in the book. In fact, one of the chapters that didn't make the book because of the size, you're limited in size in a book, and the publisher needed me to cut a chapter in order to expand other parts of the book that I felt were important to keep in there. So I call it the lost chapter. I have a whole chapter in there that takes a look back at what I call the mega techs of technology. about every 500 years, Fred, we have a significant cultural shifting behind technology. And there's certain megatechs that emerge. Now we have technology bubbling all the time, but there are certain megatechs that have the ability to shift a cultural language. And this was something else that kind of came out of my doctoral experience as I was thinking about these things, is that cultures have languages that we speak. It's how we communicate with one another socially, and we learn and transact business and all that stuff. And there are certain technologies that shift that. For example, 500 years ago, there were 3 technologies that bubbled that really defined the next 500 years of our world. And that was, first of all, the Gutenberg printing press. Many people consider the Gutenberg's technology, the printing press, to be the number one most important technological technology ever. And I would definitely put it up there in the top 1 or 2 for sure, maybe 3 if you're arguing other parts. But I got to tell you, Gutenberg, and then secondly was the mechanized clock. We don't think about how the mechanized clock changed who we are. To this day, we define our lives by the clock. What time is it? It's 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock. Well, the clock is the defining nature of who we are. We literally chunked and chinked and put everything into boxes for the last 500 years, which is what the clock technology wanted us to do. The Industrial Revolution is a reflection of clock technology. Science, the scientific revolution, is an innovation of that clock technology, or a reflection of it. And then finally, what I call the scopes, the telescope and the microscope. Well, those technologies really created what we call the modern era, about AD 1500 to 2000. But in the last 25, actually 70 years, if you go back a little bit further, maybe even close to 80 years now, you have the technology of television. That was the oldest megatech that's changed how we look at things. We now view things visually rather than orally through the ears. The internet has flattened our culture. It used to be that everything had peaks and valleys and such, but now the internet has flattened it. And the same way, the cell phone. Those 3 megatechs, the cell phone, the internet, and the television, have all flattened our culture, where anybody can be a producer, anybody can be a director, anybody can write a book, anybody can produce a film, as your friend is doing. We can all do those things. And it's shifted how we communicate. It's shifted how we do business, how we learn, how we transact, everything. Yeah. And again, we look at patterns, and about every 500 years, you see these patterns. 500 years earlier than that, there was some technologies that emerged that changed things.
Wow, this is
amazing.
Fascinating. This is really fascinating. Yeah, I wish that chapter was in there.
Maybe the next book. I'm actually working on the next book now, which is probably about a 2 or 3 year project, but I'm working on doing gen tech that goes all the way back to about 1780, from 1780 to 1900, because that technology also was the ground, really the building blocks for the 1900s. But the reason why I started in 1900 is because more technological change has happened since 1900 than in the history of the world, actually. And that's significant. But you might be interested to know, Fred, that more technological change has happened in the last 20 years, since the year 2000, than in the previous 120 years combined. And we learned how to fly. We learned how to drive automobiles, television. Think about radio, all those great technologies. They're nothing compared to social media, to the robotics, to the holographic, to the artificial intelligence that's emerging right now. And by 2030, mark my words, we are living in a different culture, a different world, because what's coming in the next 10 years is going to be even faster, more fluid, more crazy, more wonderful, more amazing, and just outrageous. You can't imagine it, but it's coming.
So I got to ask, what does all of this mean for us? Because for me, being honest, I'm a little bit scared. I'm thinking of Terminator. I watched Terminator as a kid growing up, and I'm like, are we going to be our own demise?
Right.
What does it mean to you, Rick? All of this, all these patterns.
Well, first of all, every every technology that's emerged, we've had these feelings of, I'll just use the word creepiness, the telephone. I've got a quote in the book, a couple quotes in the book about how the telephone was viewed as creepy when it was first emerged. Radio was considered demonic because of the idea that, I guess there's an obscure Bible verse that talks about Satan being the prince of the air, and so prince of the airwaves, I guess, was attached to the radio. Television was viewed as creepy in the beginning as well. So all these technologies have a way of doing that. But for me, I think what technology teaches us how to do more than anything is to be human again. As we become more inhuman in our technology, we have a longing and a desire to be more human. The one thing that technology cannot do is emote. We can love as human beings. We have the capacity to love. We have the capacity to have joy. We have the capacity to be patient, and to have sadness. It's going to teach us to be human again. And I think in many ways, that's what we've lost in this modern culture. Sometimes we get spinning so fast, and these COVID moments come along as reminders that, hey, you know what? There's more important things in life. And if anything, COVID's taught us is how to slow down, realize the importance of family and friends, and to be human again.
Wow. That's quite a message. I couldn't even type fast enough with all of that.
Yeah, I saw you typing there. You did pretty well.
Thank you. Typing's not my first forte. Oh boy, we lost Rick. What happened? Speaking of technology, it's amazing doing this show and just seeing where everybody's going, what everybody's doing. And honestly, finishing this up, I actually like it better now when things go wrong like this, because it's just another way to look at things. It's just another way to understand that we have this ability, we have this capacity to go through and do whatever it is that we need to do to make things happen. So let me reach out to Rick real quick, see if we can get him back in here. I don't know where he went, but he should be right back. Oh, here he comes. He's on his way back in. Nobody panic. Right? So technology teaches us to be human again. I love this quote. This is probably the best. This is great. I mean, this is just beyond anything that I've thought of before, but I love it. I love the fact that Rick brought this up, the fact that technology can emote, and it reminds us about our own humanity. Rick Chromey, what's going on, man?
I'm back. I was just texting you using my technology to say, hey, I'm back.
Right.
I bought this new MacBook here recently, and I'm having problems with Chrome working with it. For some reason, Chrome likes to just cut out and quit on me. And doggone it, if the technology didn't fail us there. But
interesting. It was funny because I just went right into a technology talk. I'm like, there's technology for you. You see, you just wanted me to introduce you twice, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, no, actually, I just wanted to come back to say thank you again for the opportunity. And to your listeners, I would encourage you and hopefully encourage you to go out and buy the book. It's available at my website, by the way, rickchromey.com, or you can also see it at Amazon, purchase it at Amazon. If you buy it through me, I do autograph it for you, if that's a plus for you. But either way, I'd love to interact with you. And if you have a conference coming up or someplace, I do a lot of speaking and would love to come to your leadership events and help you understand this more.
I love that. Rick, this is amazing stuff. I love it. And I just have a question. Is your autograph going to be worth money someday?
Well, probably to my dad, it might mean something, but and my wife, but
there you go.
I don't go there, Fred. Basically, I tell you what, I do this because it's out of the flowing of my heart just wants to help people. I've always wanted to just help people to understand things. And that's what I do. So if the autograph means something to you, that's great. But
oh boy, we lost him again. His computer just doesn't like him today. So anyway, we're wrapping up here. We're pretty much finishing up here with Rick. I think that this was awesome stuff. If you haven't yet, go check out his website, rickchromey.com. You can pick up his book right over there. And again, remember that technology teaches us how to be human again. Let me see if I can get Rick back on here for a quick sign off. And if not, we will just finish up because we're coming to the end of our show. anyway, but this was amazing. I really am blown away by this. I'm going to go look into some history books and just the history of the world and the United States and all those kinds of things. And yeah, I'm definitely going to be checking out Rick's book. You definitely should too. Check it out on Amazon, wherever. And yeah, so Rick said Chrome closed out on him. I think I might just finish up. But let me just shoot him a quick text here. Bear with me. So Chrome closed out on me again. Sorry, no worries. Just closing out. Bam. So on that note, I hope this was fun. I hope this was educational. I hope that you got a lot out of this month. I hope you learned about writing books. And it looks like Rick is coming back in to say goodbye to everybody with us. So let's get him on here, give him some words of wisdom to say, and then we will sign off and call it a day. Rick, what's going on, man? Dude, so here's the thing.
One more time.
Let's try it one more time. So what do you want to finish and leave our guests with today? Words of wisdom, encouragement, empowerment, or just whatever you want to say.
Well, I just want to say thank you. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to even just be here with you, Fred, and to share on this book. To me, it is a book that's kind of a life book for me, a legacy book. I have others that I'd like to write, obviously, but to me, that sets the tone of what I've ever thought and where I think we need to go. So I'm grateful for anybody who takes a look at it, and I'd love to see your response.
I love it. I'm super excited. Thanks for being here, Rick. So glad to have you, and everybody else. We'll see you again very soon. Have a good one, everybody.